What we're doing about the other tomorrow?
Yeah, we're going to put it on tomorrow.
That's what the next week.
I'll get you 35%.
I'm up for next week.
35%?
That's what the next week.
How much is it full price?
No, it's 30% sale, so I'll have to get that.
Why? When's the 30% sale?
Now, till
The art school's got
till mid-Feb or something, another 2 weeks.
Till like
You only want to do 3, you don't want to do 6?
Till 6, that's what
No,
I'm
no,
doing.
no,
I haven't got enough storage in my house.
Doing it on full
Where?
Full sets as well.
30% off?
It's the art school prim sale. It's always monthly.
I thought it just had a sale.
They have, always.
Right.
Put in, and some of the time now.
So one's actually, you may as well do one that will last us till the next sale.
So the next one, one time, that's fun.
Maybe we can
After
do
putting
six.
it's all
Six,
till
maybe.
Shavuos
Okay,
meeting.
all the shoes.
You get a cake now.
This is
I don't get paid, I do the work. I don't get paid for a long time.
this is tough.
I know I'm going to get my stender failure. Why do you all work out?
Yeah, our next move.
Spender.
Do at least, let's do at least 3. What are they?
Robbie, where'd you get 35 from?
He's got a sword.
You
An
can't
archer.
say.
Is it only art school?
35 what?
No, anything you want.
They've gone down a lot.
No, the art school sale is 30%.
Regular price has gone down from 39 pound a volume to 35.
No, it's
say
not
that.
percent off.
I know, but now it's dropped in price as well, so they're much.
Further savings, I like
I'm
that.
saying 35% off. Whatever else we'll do, I'll get you 5% off.
Yeah, okay. So
So it's got an in with
With Steinberg.
So you've got your own thing.
I know, I sort of regret buying it. now.
Okay, we have to have a test with base, a new mission, a new topic, a new sugya, and Mamish one of the supported this say this. Every Yom Tov, not just Pesach, there are 3 special korbanos to be brought. It's a big pity that a lot of people are not aware of this. The 3 special korbanos are Oilas Ve'ir, Shalmei Chagiga, and Shalmei Simcha. What are the 3 korbanos, Moshe? I never remember this. Even with even thing, Oilas Ve'ir, Shalmei Chagiga, and Shalmei Simcha. Oilas Ve'ir, the Torah says, when you come to the Beis Hamikdash, don't come empty-handed. So you bring an oila. An oila, what do you do with it? The whole thing gets burnt, and you have to bring one every Yom Tov, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot.
Every person.
Every male person is a question about families. That's oila. Then you have to bring a Shamei Chagiga. Shamei Chagiga, whenever the Torah says, the Chagos Chag LaHashem, you should celebrate it as a Yom Tov to Hashem. So when you're a little child, you translate it Chag. I don't know how to translate it Chag. It's a Yom Tov, festival. The Gemara actually explains the Chagos Chag LaHashem means I will bring a korban to Hashem. Shamei Chagiga, every Yom Tov you have to do a special Yomim as a present to Hashem. Shalmei Simcha is, the Torah says, V'samachta, you have to be V'samachta B'chadecha, you should be happy on Yom Tov. The way to be happy is by eating korbanos. So you have to bring Shalmei Simcha. 3 different korbanos. Oilas Ve'ir. Thank Hashem for coming to see this Mikdash.
Is that every time you go to the Beis Hamikdash, just on the Yom Tov?
Just Yom Tov. Shalmei Ve'ir. Shalmei Simcha, sorry, and Shalmei Chagiga. Now let me ask you a question. Let's see, if you've been listening, you should know the answer to this. There's a special halacha, you're not allowed to use something which you're obligated for something else. For example, let's say you owe money to Maisa. You can't use that money to buy your minim or to buy your pay for your idea, right? So let's say, for example, you've got a call which you already promised. A neder takadosh baruch hu. A neder, you promised the sheep as a person to Hashem. Can you use it for Oilas Ve'ir, Shamei Simcha, or Shamei Chagiga? What would you say? What? You say for Shlomim you can. You say no. None of you are 100% right yet.
Shalmei Simcha, why not?
No, that's for you.
Oh,
Shalmei Simcha, it's about bringing korban, so it doesn't matter what you bring.
no.
You get
You said it's about being happy. No, you said it's about being happy.
No,
Don't say
that's
too much.
right.
Don't say too much.
No, you said it right. You said it right. Very good. Oilas Ve'ir is a chiyuv to bring a person back to Shpoch because you get to the Beis Hamikdash. I'm going to use a korban which I've already promised. That's not giving a gift to Hashem. Shalmei Chagiga is a shlomim for the Yom Tov. How could you use a korban which already promised? But as Tori correctly pointed out, Shalmei Simcha is not because the Torah says. I'm not saying everybody agrees with this. I'm just saying according to many places. Shalmei Simcha, the idea is you have to be happy on Yom Tov. How am I supposed to be happy? Eat korbanos. So what difference does it make which korban I bring? If I bring this korban or that korban, it's a korban which already promised. Okay. The Mai said every single Yom Tov you have to bring 3 korbanos. Oilas Ve'ir, Shalmei Simcha, and Shalmei Chagiga. We'll be thrilled to bring the special schos. Pesach, you have to bring an extra one
Pesach, Korban Pesach.
besides Korban Pesach.
Another one.
Yeah,
That's-
another
That's 5 then.
Yes, another one. And if you don't have this clear, when you read the Ram Hilchos Korbanos Pesach, Hilchos Chagiga, it's mamish you lose. You don't understand what he's talking about. It goes on. The Ram goes through everything very kaseta. There's plenty of room.
I think the Korban Pesach-
The Ram, the one more, and this is very sadistic. Mamish is sadistic. It's a shame. There's Chagigas Arboso and Chagigas Chamishoso. Chagigas Chamishoso means the Chagiga of the 15th. It doesn't mean literally 15th because you can bring it any day. That's the normal Shalmei Chagiga. But there's another Korban Chagiga that you have to bring on Erev Pesach. The reason you bring this Chagiga is simply because the Torah says that when you eat Korban Pesach, you should eat it ala sova, when you're satisfied. Since it's a mitzvah to eat when you're satisfied, so then sometimes the Korban Pesach will not satisfy you. How will the Korban Pesach not satisfy you? Big chabur, very good. If it's a big chabur, which the Mishnah always uses it, b'muat. B'muat meaning when it's a small amount, meaning it's a small amount because there's a lot of people. So then whenever there's a small amount, you have to bring Chagigas Arbos, or the Chagiga of the 14th. So you have to bring the Chagiga of the 14th, the Chagiga of the 15th, plus the Korban Pesach, plus Shamei Simcha, and plus Olas Ve'ir. And we're going to see each one of these Korbanos has different halachas. The Gemara over here only discusses certain parts of it. The Gemara Chagiga tells us much more halachas. Here mainly we're going to be discussing Chagigas Arbos.
These Korbanos are bought the same time as Korban Pesach.
Oh, that's a very big machlekes. And the funny thing is, there isn't a Gemara or a Mishnah that talks about this explicitly. Not that I know. Only for the fact that they shouldn't argue about it, I assume that there's no Gemara or Mishnah talking about it. That means the question is Chagigas Arbos, so when do you bring it? Chagigas Chamishah, so when do you bring it? On Pesach. Chagigas Arbos, so do you bring it in the morning? Do you bring it after Korban Tamid? That's the question. It's machlekes is showing. We'll leave it. So Amos saying maybe Chagiga Amos, says the Mishnah, Samach Tesam Beis. When do you bring a Korban Chagiga? Only if it's a weekday. If Pesach is a Shabbos, you do not bring Chagigas Arbos. Why not? Because it's not Derech Shabbos. But Tahara, only if you're all toy. If you're not toy, that means even if we say Korban Pesach is Nidcha B'tumah, Chagigas Arbos is not. Uvamut, when everybody's only going to get a little bit to eat. But Ubizman Shubah b'Shabbos, if Korban Pesach comes on a Shabbos, b'Merubah, or if there's a lot to eat, or b'Tumah, if everybody's Tomei, you cannot bring a Korban Chagiga. So you have to have 3 conditions being a Chagiga. You have to be a weekday, toy, and a few. Says the Mishnah. Chagiga is about mina soy, mina boko, mina kvosim, mina izim, mina schor, mina keves, mina cheles ishtomim lailecha. The Chagiga we can vote sheep, cattle, male, female, sheep or goats, and 2 days and 1 night. How long can a normal Korban Pesach be eaten for? Nice. Oh. But Chagiga can be eaten for 2 days and 1 night.
Here, we're always talking the 14th.
Oh, that's the most going to discuss a great length. Pashas Swar Bosa, because the beginning of the Mishnahs. And later more, okay. I saw a few of the Shulim ask a question that Bishlim Bokot, so you need to teach you because Korban Pesach is only tzoy. And Bishlim is Chom Nekevois need to teach you. No, and Kvosim and Israel is Chom Nekevois. It said and Chom Nekevois also because the Korban Pesach can only be male, not female. The Kvosim is Izim, Kvosim and Izim, even Korban Pesach can be bought from sheep and goats. So in that way, Chagiga is not different from Korban Pesach, and they're disturbed. In fact, some people are moichik these words because that's not extra to Korban Pesach, right? Everything else is extra Korban Pesach. So first thing I was bothered that we're talking now about Korban Pesach, and suddenly we switched to Chagiga. Why did we switch from Korban Pesach to Chagiga? My Tana Diktoni Chagiga. What did we learn that he suddenly mentioned Chagiga? Answer markets. Tana, we learned that we learned that you can't carry it and bring it from outside the Tchum, etc., from Yerushalayim to carry it. Because not the Shabbos. The connection between this Mishnah and the previous Mishnah is only to do with Shabbos. The last Mishnah we learned that preparations Korban Pesach is not Derech Shabbos. Now we're learning that Chagiga in general is not Derech Shabbos. But if it's a Shabbos, you can't. So again, really the whole paper can continue to talk about Korban Pesach, and this is just one Mishnah in the middle of Chagiga. But the reason this Mishnah of Chagiga is brought in is because it says something else which is not Derech Shabbos. Omar Vashi, Shma Mino, Chagiga Sabos, on top of Ein Amud Aleph, Lav Chivohi, it's not an obligation. You don't have to. If it's a Chivo, Teisi b'Shabbos, Teisi b'Mov, Teisi b'Tumah, Ubemut. It should come b'Shabbos, it should come b'Meruba. So Teisi b'Mut, full stop, sorry, Teisi b'Mut too. The fact that it should come in all these three cases, because at the end of the day, we know that any korban chayva is brought even on Shabbos, even B'tumah, and even B'morah. So why not? The answer is Chagigas Habosa is not obligation.
If it's the supplement,
So it's not an obligation.
if it's a supplement the korban Pesach,
Yes.
then surely you shouldn't be able to bring it with Tumah.
Why? Because we're talking about because we're talking about with Roim of Christ or Tomei, so then you're allowed to bring it. Why do you bring it? Because the time the Chagiga Boma Pesach Nechel is Tchila. First, the Chagiga K'dei Pesach Nechel Al Haseva, in order they should come Pesach Al Haseva. So here we have a very interesting machlokas, a fascinating machlokas. This din of Chagigas Habosa is brought why? In order that when you eat the Korban Pesach, you should be full. Shittas Rashi, here and other places, we Rashi doesn't really say so much, is that it is a din d'oraisa. That means min ha-Torah, you have to bring Chagiga in order to eat the Korban Pesach al Haseva. Teresa says that it's only d'Rabbanan. But if you look in the Rivah, it's the first of the thin lines of Teresa's. The Mashma B'Yerushalmi, the whole of you should see inside the first of the thin lines. The whole the Pesach nechal al Haseva and we do Rabbanan. Gzem shmishviras etza. The halacha is you're not allowed to break the bones of the Korban Pesach in order to be able to eat the Korban Pesach. Right? If you want to get out the last piece of meat, you can't break it. This is a very important. We have lots of sugyas about it. If you do not eat a chagiga, by the time you come to Korban Pesach, you'll be starving. Imagine Shulchan Aruch, you'll be starving, right? But not depends how much matzah more you eat, but then usually you've lost the appetite. Oh, that's a very good question. The Rishonim bothered very terrible. Why are you being come on chagiga? Just eat potatoes.
The other meat doesn't have to be a problem.
Yeah, it could be other meat. It's not so straightforward about coming to a shalam and shechting a meat with not Korban Pesach. You're right. It is a very good question. The Ran discusses it. I'm going to leave it. It's a big discussion. But the Rivon said this only way to Rabbanan Gezeim from Shviras Etzem. Shem lo yisa bal haseva mitich shuvoi blech rabos shavar atzam so bal shvir to Rosan. So Teresa says the whole purpose is only to Rabbanan. Other Rishonim argue and they say it's the Raisa. As Suri put out, it's a very important question. If the whole purpose of Korban Pesach is a chagiga, it's just that you shouldn't be hungry, there are other ways to get around it. I just want to point out there's a famous chinuch. It's Mitzvah Yud Zayin. If you see this chinuch, you should really get a chance to read it. Chinuch talks about this mitzvah. You're not allowed to break a bone. Why not allowed to break a bone in Korban Pesach? Because poor people, when they break bone, when they're hungry, they break the bone to get every piece of meat. Why do you have to eat it ala soba? Because so we, when we came out to Mitzrayim, we want to show that we're wealthy, so we don't break the bones. Why do we call Pesach ala soba? Because poor people eat when they're hungry. Rich people eat even when they're full. So we eat Korban Pesach when we're full. Why do we roast it? It says poor people, they don't eat roasted meat, because when you roast meat, you lose a good chelik of it. What you do is you cook it, because then it gets bigger and bigger, it gets fatter. So, but if we come out of Mitzrayim, we were rich, so we eat it roasted. No, the Chinuch says. No, Chinuch says, my dear son, because the Chinuch wrote to say for his son, you're going to ask me so many mitzvahs to remind me of one little thing that I should remember the freedom we felt came out of Mitzrayim. Why just do one mitzvah? I have to eat it roasted, I have to eat it no breaking bones, I have to eat it ala sova. So many mitzvahs just for one thing. Says the Chinuch, what's the answer of the Chinuch? Don't say such a thing, because if you say such a question, you're a fool, he says to his son. Because the more you work at doing something, the more you're becoming that midah. And he says this is a very famous line of the Chinuch, that if a king was to ask you to become an executioner, even if you only did it as a job, with time, you'll become a cruel person. And if the king appointed you to do chesed, with time, you'll become a Baal chesed. Every Adam nifar kfi puloisa v'acha ma'asim nimshach halavovos. That's how he starts off. And therefore he says that every mitzvah that reminds us that the freedom before the coming of Mitzrayim helps us. So the fact that you eat it at Asiva, you eat Korban Pesach when you're already full up, that's why the African is the Korban Pesach, you eat at the end of the meal, makes you feel more and more the connection to yourself with Mitzrayim. Okay. Now, what?
They said you get
So we're doing all this to make
I know. That's the question of the Manishtana, I think. Why do you do some things one way or something else? But the so the Mishnah says eat it for 2 days. Now we're going to have a sugya of Ben Tema. Ben Tema holds that Chagigas Arboso has the same halachas as Korban Pesach. Somebody once asked me this question, and I remember Dad says, always remember. Somebody asked the question, I wonder if any of you get it. I don't know if I should offer 50 pence, I'm not sure if I can afford it. By the time you get the answer. Somebody asked, whoever asked the question, I was only 13 at the time. He asked the question, Pesach is only eaten b'chomotz. What does that mean? So is that true? Of course, Pesach not eaten b'chomotz. But it's a true statement to say Pesach is only eaten b'chomotz. You should know the answer.
Not come in yet.
Pesach
No.
Sheni.
Testament and stuff or something.
Oh, you're on the right track.
Please coming your way.
Oh my goodness, I'm getting it. No.
No.
We say this is coming. Ein necheles elo balaylo ad chatzois lemenuyov and soli. Beis is balaylo, ches is chatzois, mem is menuyov, is soli. Wait a second, remember it. Bechomotz. A Pesach ein nechel elo bechomotz. Balaylo, chatzois, menuyov, soli. Those days I used to say so came on much more than I say nowadays. So I still try, but the point is that that's bechomotz. Now the question is, Kohen Chagiga, which is brought with, in our Mishnah, it's clearly that what? It's eaten for 2 days, 1 night. Says the Gemara. Maslis de leuke ben tema Mishnah like ben tema the time ben tema over Chagiga bon Pesach Heike Pesach. Bein and the cheles in the line only for 1 day and a night. The Rishonim ask, what do you mean a day and a night? What do you mean a day and a night? Pesach is only to the night, and they say it means that night. Yom v'layla. That's how the Torah explains. Yom v'layla means that night, not the day and the night. The Chagigas Chemishos and the Cheles Leshomim V'layla Echad. The Chagigas Abos Yitzba Mishum Simcha, ve'en Yitzba Mishum Chagiga. You're Yitzba because of Simcha, not Chagiga. Again, this means like this. If you are, this is how Rashi explains studies. If you are makdish a sheep to be Chagigas Abos, and you shechted it, instead of shechting on the 14th, you shechted it on the 15th, then you're Yitzba because of Simcha and not because of Chagiga. We said, on every Yom Tov, you have to bring Shamei Chagiga and Shamei Simcha. This sheep, you designated as Chagiga Sabasa. You never used it. Can you use it for Shamei Chagiga? No, because you designated it for something else. Can you use it for Shamei Simcha? Yes. Why? Because the answer is that the Chiyuv Shamei Simcha is only that you should be Yotze to eat a korban of something of Simcha. So now, I've eaten Simcha, the fact that it's another name, that doesn't matter. My time to ben tema, kedamasi of chile break, v'lo yolin la breaker, zeva chag Pesach. You shouldn't leave over to the morning the Korban Pesach. The pasuk could have said zevach Pesach. Why say zevach chag Pesach? Don't leave over to the morning the Korban Pesach. Why do you have to say zevach chag Pesach? Zevach chag is chagiga. The word zevach chag is referred to chagiga. Ha Pesach kemashmoi v'mach v'no lo yolin. So from here you learn that the Korban Pesach, the Korban Chagiga of the 14th, can only be eaten at night. That means we just said that Chagiga Sabasa is only eaten at night. But what about roasted? That means we see from the Torah that Chagiga Sabasa has got certain halachas that Korban Pesach. And the more explains. When the Torah read the Pesach that you must leave it over to the morning. Maybe it makes no difference. That means when we say that Chagiga is like Korban Pesach, which Chagiga are we talking about now? Chagiga Sabasa. Is it like Korban Pesach? We ask the Manishtano. Now, if you look in the Mishnah later, it's going to have the Manishtano. We're going to read the Manishtano in the Mishnah. The Manishtano of the Mishnah was slightly different from the Manishtano of today. Because in the Manishtano of the Mishnah, one of the questions is, besides from Matzah Moi, one of the questions is, Halaylo Azeh Kuloi Tzli. Tonight we only eat roasted. All other nights we eat either cooked or roasted. Tonight is only roasted. Why do we say it nowadays? We don't have Pesach. In fact, we only eat everything but roasted. So the point is, in those days they would say all roasted. Is it true they ate only roasted the night of Seder night? Chagiga Sabasa.
That wasn't everyone.
Oh, says the Gemara, Tosh ba'alayla ze kulei tzli. V'amar chisazu divei ben tema. It has to be ben tema, because according to the Chachamim, it's clearly not true. Because they hold Chagiga Sabasa has got no connection to Korban Pesach. They're allowed to eat for 2 days. Shema Mino is a raya that the Chagiga has to be bought roasted as well. So far we've learned of the bechometz of Korban Pesach. It's balayla, it's at chatzois, and it's sli. Now the Gemara asks another question. That means there are 3 halachas which we learned that Korban Pesach. You can't bring a female Korban Pesach, you can't bring a cow, and you can't bring if it's more than a year old. What does it mean more than a year old? How old is it to be?
Between 1 and
No, between 8 days and up to 12 months. Once it's 12 months in a day, once it's 12 months, it's no good. What about ben teimo regarding chagiga? Ki akshach when the Pesach with the achila is only how you eat it. But for everything else, not. Maybe there's no difference. That means we've proven that you got to eat it that night. We've proven you have to eat it sleep. But do you have to have it a female or male? Toshima. Chagiga boy ma Pesach, Haike Pesach. Bomb in that soil only from sheep in the bottom of boko. It's not bought from cattle. Bomb that's in the bottom of the caves. Bobashnoso in the Bobastation, in the Necheles in the Yim, Laila when the Necheles said it's sleep, in the Necheles Elolim Nuyov. Man is only eaten for those who are designated to it. Man, Shabbos Ladies, Lehaisva, who's the one who holds all this logic? Ben Tema. Shmami no, Kulumil Sebeinon, Shmami no is a proof that we're talking about. And according to Ben Tema, you need literally the common Chagiga of the 14th, literally add all the halachas. Are you allowed to break a bone of the Chagiga according to Ben Tema? The Torah compared it. Boy. The word boy in it is spare. The Apostle could have just said, don't break a bone. Why does it have to say, don't break a bone in it? Boy, bechagiga in it, and not a chagiga. It's a miyot. Or dil the high boy because of the Apostle also. Again, the Torah says that we learned to come to Entema that chagiga and Korban Pesach are literally the same. But the question is, the Torah says let's lishbu boy in it. So maybe it's coming to be mayit, not chagiga, or maybe it's going to mayit, not possible. Toshima, we're going to bring a proof. This proof requires a certain amount of concentration. It's a warning. Again, that if let's say Korban Pesach becomes possible, then you're allowed to break the bones. Because you're not going to eat it anyway, you're allowed to break the bones. That means
You would have thought.
you would have thought you're not allowed. Toshima, let's say you find something in the time of the Beis Hamikdash and you want to use it for your korban. Can you use it for your korban? Let's say you find a knife, a spoon. Now you have to tovel everything first. And then after you tovel it, you wait for Nacht. Because for all you know, a Zov touched it, a Mace touched it. Oh, actually, if a Mace touched it, it's Shlisha Zov, but not what? So wherever you find something, you have to tovel and wait for Nacht. The exception is if you can be sure that the person who owned it would have already toveled it. That means at certain times you can be absolutely sure that the owner would have toveled it. Now, Rashi interesting asks the question, how can you be sure of anything? Maybe the owner lost it and never got a chance to tovel it. Rashi says nobody lost anything in Yerushalayim because it was so crowded, it was impossible that an item would go missing. Somebody would find it for you. Okay. We'll leave that question out that maybe got lost because they found it. So every item in Yerushalayim, you have to tovel it before you use it, unless you're sure that the owner would have toveled it. The question we're asking now is, Korban Chagiga, are you allowed to break a bone? By the way, according to the Chachamim, are you allowed to break a bone in Korban Chagiga? Very good, yes. I want to see if everybody else has it, yeah?
Yeah.
Why, what's the why that yes? Why?
Says-
Mishnah doesn't say about breaking the bone of Chagiga. It just says, no. Yeah, because according to Chachamim, there's no comparison between Chagiga and Korban Pesach. You're allowed to bring it to a female, you're allowed to bring a 2-year-old. So there's no reason not to break a bone. The whole question is only according to Ben Tamer that compares it. Okay. So what it says, Toshima, Sakin Shlitzes Parabos. Imagine you find a knife on the 14th of Nisan, Shechet Bamiyad, you can shecht it straight away. Why can you shecht it straight away? Maybe it's tummy. Explain more. Why can you shecht straight away? I walk around on Yerushalayim, I see a knife on the floor.
Also, you can't wait till it's snapped.
No, but maybe I should use a different knife. Maybe that knife is tummy. I meant, how do you know you can use the knife? Maybe it's tummy. The answer is, no owner would in the world allow his knife to become tummy for the 14th. He obviously would have told it on the 13th and waited for Nacht. Why? Because everybody who owned a knife in Yerushalayim would know that his knife would be needed the next day. Is that clear? Everybody who had a knife, a shechita knife, would know that I might use the knife the next day.
You had 2 knives.
So what? Even if you had 2 knives, there's lots of people coming. You know, let me take this, there's no way in the world that your knife will not be needed the next day. Since there's no way in the world your knife will not be needed the next day, you'll tovel it straight away. So if you find a knife on the 13th, showing that you repeat your matbel, the word repeat is a bit difficult. You're not sure if it's been toveled. It probably has, but since you're not sure, you have to tovel it again. Okay. Again, you find a knife on the 13th, you tovel it. Why do you tovel it? Because maybe the owner knew it was tummy. decided to wait till the 13th and tovel it and wait for Nacht, knowing that he'll only use it on the 14th. But if you find it on the 14th, you can be sure that it's definitely toy because nobody would allow it to be toy. It's like, for example, let's say you want to sell ice cream on the beach, and you know it's going to be a warm day the next day. You're not going to run out the day before. You're going to make sure that you've got every available ice cream available because you know this is the prime time that you need it. So if you've got a knife, you know very well that you're going to make sure that knife will be ready for things. So you're going to do it on the 13th ready for it.
We're not supposed to stop people less reliable in that way
No, we're
and
not.
that much.
The fakir, the Gemara says elsewhere that on Yom Tov we won't make a gabi to because people won't machen. So we're sure that people got to that. Kupitz is like an axe. What? An axe. Bein b'zeh sheno matva. An axe you always have to turbo. Why do you always have to turbo the axe? Because a person may think to himself, I might not need it. I might not need it. Why would the person not need an axe? Oh, very good. Oh, man. If it's shittas chachamim that you're allowed to break the bones of the chagiga, ma'ishlo sakin the matbil the chazil Pesach. Why was everybody make sure the knife's so toy? Because he knew that he might have to be called Pesach. Kupitz damio chazil chagiga. Everybody knows that there's a good. If you've got a hammer on axe, are you going to let it become tummy on the 14th? Of course not. You've got the kol chagiga you're about to bring. If you've got the kol chagiga you're about to bring, so then of course you're going to break bones. So of course you need the axe. So everybody make sure it's stored. Elolav the ben tema. It must be ben tema. V'shmami no yesh v'shmush etzem. That the halacha is that you're not allowed to break a bone. Since you're not allowed to break a bone, that's why you have to tiver it. Why? Let's go through very slowly. Since according to ben tema, you're not allowed to break a bone, not of the Korban Pesach, not going on Chagiga. So everybody walking around with an axe on the 13th of Nisan, is he in a rush to tiver it? No. Because he thinks to himself, tomorrow I don't need it. Because tomorrow I'm going to eat the Korban Pesach Mechagiga, neither of which I can break a bone. So when I need it? I need it on the 15th when I bring my Shalmei Simcha, my Shalmei Chagiga, where I'm allowed to break those bones. So I'll table it on the 14th. Why should I table it on the 13th? Look, it says, well, we're talking about where the 14th was a Shabbos, and therefore he thinks to himself, I don't need it. Again, a person walking around on the 13th, he sees a knife. What does he do to himself? He has to table it. Why? Because maybe the person's waiting for the 14th. He sees the hammer. It makes no difference if it's the 13th or 14th. Says more, it can't be. If the 14th is a Shabbos, the Mishnah now brings 3 situations where everybody agrees that a knife will be toy even on the 13th. Or no, that the rule we said before is not clear. Why? Why? If you find the knife on the 13th and the 14th is a Shabbos, when will the owner tovel his knife? The day before, on the 13th. Why won't he wait till the 14th? Because of a Shabbos. And you can shecht on the 15th immediately. That is referring to anything. Anything you find on the 15th is always toy, both knives and both hammers. Why? By the time it comes to the 15th, regardless of when Erev Shabbos is, everybody knows that the 15th, everything has to be toy because it's too late. Because that is the Nimsas Kupitz Kshul a second. If the hammer and the knife are tied together, many times they're tied together because people would shecht with one, and afterwards they want to break the bones to eat the meat of the other. Haikasakin, then both of them have the same status. Again, the finishes off that if the 14th is a Shabbos, the halacha is different because then everybody makes sure to table everything on the 13th because they know that the 14th is not allowed to table. Why not allowed to table on the 14th? The second month. So therefore, since you can't table on the 14th, everything's on 13th. So obviously the ratio which says there's a difference between 13th and 14th is not discussing when that year of Shabbos was a Shabbos, of Pesach was a Shabbos. Because if Pesach was a Shabbos, there would be no difference between 13th and 14th. So obviously we're talking about Pesach not a Shabbos. So again, let's go very briefly again. We've got machlokes chachamim and ben tema as to whether the chagigas habasa is the same as Korban Pesach or not. The chachamim said there's no comparison. Chagigas habasa you have to break bones. Ben tema says chagigas habasa and Korban Pesach have many similarities. The Gemara's question is every similarity. What about breaking a bone? So what brings a raya from this halacha? This halacha is if you find a knife, it depends if it's on 13th or the 14th, but a hammer even on the 14th. It may still be tummy. Why would a hammer be tummy on the 14th? If it's Shittas Chachamim, why would it be Tomei? Everybody knows you need to break bones. The answer is must be going to Ben Tema, and it's a right that Ben Tema holds that you're not allowed to break bones at all. Furthermore, maybe it's Shittas Chachamim and the 14th was a Shabbos. Well, it can't be because then the rest of it doesn't fit in. Because if the Erev Shabbos, if Erev Pesach was a Shabbos, already on the 13th, everything's stable. So Gemara says, Elo Shaba Memeruba, top of Einon Beis. We're talking about that there was a lot of people. Sorry, there's a lot of meat and a little bit of people. So therefore, the person thought to himself, I'm not going to bring a Kohen Chagiga. Since he's not going to bring a Kohen Chagiga, so if he didn't table his hammer. And that's why it is, therefore, the hammer is Tomei on the 14th. How would he know that he's going to have a few people and a lot of meat? Why? Rashi explains that people would come on their Pesach and say to you, can I join your Chabur? Can I join your Chabur? So therefore, nobody would know on the 13th how many people is going to have this Kohen Pesach on the 14th. So therefore, anybody who owned a hammer on the 13th, would he table it? He would have to table it. Why would he have to table it? No, according to Entema, no. Even according to Chachamim, would have to, according to Chachamim, he would have to table it. Why?
No, because you're allowed to break bones.
Because you're allowed to break bones. Yes, even I was going to say. We tried to say it's only according to Ben Tema, but it's not working according to Ben Tema because it's even according to Chachamim. It says, well, why it's the Chachamim? Because we're talking about where he knows that he's not going to bring a chagiga, and that's why it's Tomei. It says, well, he doesn't know he's not going to bring a chagiga. He's always chayshish he might have to bring a chagiga. So according to the Chachamim, of course it would be Toy. The fact that the Beis says it is Tomei is a raya that it's going to be Tema. So it also says about the Shabbat B'tumah. Again, we're going b'shittas Chachamim. The shittas Chachamim is you're allowed to break the bones, but he knows he's not going to bring a common chagiga. Why? Because it's Tomei. Everything's Tomei. Say for no yadi. How does he know? Meaning like this, that obviously we're talking about that if we're talking about where everybody knows exactly what's going to be Tomei, then why is he turned with his knife? The answer is that regarding the Chagiga knows there's going to be likely Tomei. So the Gemara says like this. Again, the misnosi. Now the king died. In the midst of when a king dies, everybody has to go through the Levaya. The misnosi Amos. When did he die? So they died on the 13th Sakinomali. Why do you rely that the knife is toy? And you say that the hammer is Tomei. If the king died on the 13th, everybody knows the common Pesach is going to be bought by Tumah. They won't bother tabling anything. Why is the knife toy but the hammer not? The nasi is half time. B'shloisha on the 13th. Sakit echad sveika matbilo. Kupitz a trei sveika lo matbilo is not to temper it. I'll try to explain this very clearly, like this. Going back, there are two ways. The Beis tells us basically, if you walk around Yerushalayim and you pick up a hammer and a knife on the 14th of Nisan, you can be 100% sure the knife is toy. You cannot be sure that the hammer is toy. There are two ways to understand this statement. Why are you sure the knife is toy and then the hammer is you're not sure? Either we're going to just Ben Tema, and then it's beautiful. Ben Tema is straightforward. He holds they're not allowed to smash the bones of the Chagiga or the Kohen Pesach. So therefore, since you can't smash any bones, there's no point in traveling the hammer on the 13th because there's no point, you're not going to use the hammer on the 14th. So people only traveled it on the 14th, waited for Nacht. But the knife, you know you're going to use the Kohen Chagiga. So if you walk around Yerushalayim on the 14th, you can be sure your knife is toy. But if you find a hammer, you can't be sure. According to Ben Tema, if you say according to Ben Tema, you're not allowed to break the bones of the Chagiga, it's mamish beautiful. But the Gemara doesn't want to prove it. The Gemara says there's another way to understand it. We're talking about unique circumstances where there was a Nasi who was dying on the 30th, he was half dying. Now, a person walking around with a knife and a person who owns a knife and a hammer thinks to himself like this. There's a chance that he'll die. If he dies, then we don't need the knife to be toy. Why? Because everybody Pesach Babatumah will go to the Levaya. It's the 13th afternoon, we'll talk about the 13th afternoon, because you have to table it before Nacht. So therefore, but there's a chance he won't die. If he doesn't die, I'll need the knife to be told. So he tables it, ala sofek, maybe the king will not die and Pesach be bought with Tumah. The hammer, though, he doesn't table. Why doesn't he table? Because he thinks himself like this. If the king will die, it will be Tomei, and then I don't need it to be Tomei. If the king doesn't die, Rashi explains he thinks to himself there's a good chance that my group will be a very small group. If it's a very small group, then my Korban Pesach will have an abundance of meat. If there's an abundance of meat, I will bring a chagiga, because you only bring a chagiga when there's a shortage of meat. And then the Korban Pesach itself, can you break the bones? Every degree is not allowed to. So he has two reasons to assume that he won't be using the hammer.
It
Betal.
should be a smaller group if we're going.
No.
Guys.
No, that's not connected.
No, but before we said how should
Oh,
we know? What's the difference?
Answer, you're right, he doesn't know. But now the Gemara is taking that answer and using it in addition to this answer and using the two together. A person who owns a hammer on the 13th will say to himself, why should I bother opening it? For all I know, the king will die and everybody will be tummy, and anyway will be tummy. And even if the king doesn't die, there's a chance the Korban Pesach there'll be abundance of meat, and then I won't need the chagiga, and then I won't be able to use the hammer. So I'll only take it on the 14th. And that's why if you find a knife and a hammer on the 14th, the knife you say is toy, and the hammer you say is tommy. Okay. Tanya, Yehuda ben Dustoi Pirush, who ben Dustoi Benoi. Yehuda ben Dustoi separated from the Chazal, him and his son. That means he made a demonstration, he was upset, and he moved away, he split up. He went to live as far as he could. He held that Korban Chagiga of our Bosa is bought on Shabbos. Why? Since the Torah says you have to Korban Chagiga, so you have to go on Shabbos as well, like on Pesach. Tamani, he said, I'm amazed al Shnei Gedolei Adush Mamav Talon Shel Chachamim Gedolim V'Dal Shonim Gedolim V'Lo Yomulem Yisrael Chagiga Doiches Shabbos. So what was the point of living in the south? Is the halacha is that some Jews, b'derech v'choika, far away, is part of the Korban Pesach. He never wanted to come to Yerushalayim in case the Korban Pesach would be on a Friday. Sorry, on a Shabbat. The Pesach would be a Shabbos, and he held the Chagiga should be bought on Shabbos, and he knew the Chachamim wouldn't let him. So therefore, rather he decided to give up on the mitzvah Korban Pesach rather than go against the shitta of the Chagiga. And this takes a huge discussion. The Shash actually talks about it. Even if you're not Chayav Kos, he lost the mitzvah say of Korban Pesach. Chazlish writes a few words. He just says that sometimes when a person feels strongly about a matter, he'll be over other things just to migdal milsa. So migdal milsa to establish.
Stubborn, isn't it? I don't want to say it's a bad thing, but it seems like he's just being stubborn for the sake of it.
He felt that you have to be called a chagiga.
100%. But
so therefore, what should he do if he was good? What's his svah? The chsiv. Was a Vachta Pesach Hashem Leikecho Tzonu Boko. Yishmein Korban Pesach Sheep and Cattle. What's the problem with this pasuk? Yishmein Korban Pesach Hashem Sheep and Cattle. Boko. You can't win Cattle. Oh, but lo yin Pesach Elem Nakvos V'Neizim. Elet Tzon ze Pesach Boko ze Chagiga. V'Machmonav is a Vachta Pesach. The Torah calls them both the Korban Pesach. Since the Torah calls them both the Korban Pesach, is a right that what? That both can be bought on Shabbos. Is it our job to explain those who separate from Klal Yisrael? For a different Rosh. We mentioned this before, that if a person designated as a Korban Pesach, and he never used it as a Korban Pesach, and then after Pesach he shechts it, what is it? A Shlomim. That means Moisa Pesach is what is a Shlomim. Shenema is Vachta Pesach Hashem Lekecho Tzonu Boko. B'chi Pesach with a Boko bo, but in Pesach bo lekvos v'neizim. And a Moisa Pesach yele dova bo min hatzonu min haboko. The leftover Korban Pesach is bought for sheep and cattle. Meaning, either the Torah is coming to tell you that Chagiga is bought on Shabbos, or that Moisa Pesach is bought as a Shlomim. It says, Shabbos, Havada Korban Sibur. Ma'aset is a Korban Sibur, Chagiga is a Korban Sibur. We shouldn't point out that Korban Sibur is something which is everybody brings, even though it's not bought by the tzibur for the whole tzibur, but it's bought by each individual. Since everybody has to bring at the same time, it's common tzibur. Omar b'ila mishuv Yehuda ben Saf Omar ko. The Chagris v'Yisachag la'Hashem Shiva Somim Bashon. The Torah is about Sukkos, and I said to you before, Chagris v'Yisachag. Most children learn it to celebrate a festival or something, but the real translation is you bring a Shalmei Chagiga. Now the Pasuk says 7 days. How many days is Sukkot if you add Shmini Atzar? It's 8 days. Shiva Shmoinava. And Kana Chagiga Shne Doiches Shabbos. It doesn't push away Shabbos. Since it doesn't push away Shabbos, therefore it's only 7 days. Sometimes you only find 6 days. Kigoin, Shechal Yom Tov Rishon Chag Shabbos. At the first day Sukkot, the last day Sukkot, the Shabbos, you're only going to have 6 days of Chagiga, not 7 days. Omar Abaya, Ovin Tichra Lema Kel Musa. Ovin who lost his children. Tichra is somebody Shachol who lost his children. So before we ask the question, why would Abaya shtechim like that? I saw the asker use it as a question because it's again the notice asker doesn't like to say things. I once saw a word, a very nice word, which is a very nice pshat. Abaya is upset with Ovin for asking him what he felt was a ridiculous question. He says him who lost his children asks such a silly question. Seems like a very terrible thing to say. Very harsh. I think it's when Yehuda says it. What? Oh, it's Chayotz and asked one. He says, he said like this, only Ovin would never have made such a mistake. How could he ask such a ridiculous question? It must have been that when he was in such pain for losing his children, he came up with a question while he was mourning the loss of his children. His mind wasn't clear. Otherwise, he couldn't have possibly made such a mistake. So that while he was in the terrible throes of sadness, this is the kind of question he came up with because it's not a good question. So it's a murder code there. Maybe call Milsa. Again, the Torah says, the Mishnah is saying that there are 7 days of Chagiga. 8 you'll never have, because you'll always have 1 day of the 8 which will be a Shabbos. But 7 most years will be. It is true that sometimes you'll have 6 if first day. But the Mishnah is just telling you that the Torah is telling you 7 days of Chagiga because you'll never have 8. Sometimes you'll have 6. Okay. So again, we've got Machleikas Tanoim. 2 Machleikas that we've learned today. Machleikas Ben Taima and everybody else as to whether Chagigas Abaso has the Seras Korban Pesach, and another Machleikas is Chagigas Abaso Doiches Shabbos, and it's to do with the Apostle. What's the word Boka doing over here? Now, my question is, let me start the next one. I think not. It's a whole new topic. It's a shame to start a new topic just before the end. Okay, we're stopping over here. We're starting a new topic. It's not a new topic completely. Oma Ola Einon with base 4 lines from the bottom. I have a very, very good work.
This Ben Duso is related to the
Macha Ben Duso.